My project is called Meeresvogel, and I've been working with Stefan Seaman and Ian Russell, and I thank them for their patience and all their help. So Project Meeresvogel addresses a problem that I think the last project has also alluded to slightly, and that's that so many stories in the world have a weather-related component that can be more related with the help of graphics. However, there seem to be two extremes. Either the scientists are working with a really complicated systems for doing very detailed and technical graphics and illustrations. And then at the other end, we see a lot of, the public see a lot of sort of mass media weather forecasts, which are kind of, for the most part, very simplified and kind of get rid of a lot of the detail and, do the job they need to do. But it leaves this space in between where people want to talk about things, not necessarily weather stories, but stories that have, in which the weather plays a big role. But they don't have a way to easily produce the graphics that will help them communicate those stories. So my project has been exploring a potential solution to this. There won't be just one solution, but this is hopefully one of many. And it's a Python module that will help people to create these graphics easily without having to learn all the details of a tool like MetView, which is an extremely useful and powerful tool, but does come with quite a steep learning curve, especially if you're not already kind of trained in meteorology or other geo-earth sciences. And just as a note, for the mystery of the name Meeresvogel, I just wanted to have a nice name, and Meeresvogel means a seabird. So the idea is it both incorporates the letters of MetView and Google Earth into the word Meeresvogel, and also it has a nice image of a bird that can sort of skim the waves and see things from above on the ocean. Although I hasten to add, I'm not only concerned about visualizing ocean weather. I do hope that I can get together with some people that have stories from the earth to tell from the land. But just a bit of background on why I want to do this particular thing. So professionally, I'm a web systems engineer, and I have a passion for telling stories with data. And two of my favorite jobs have been in the area of meteorology, and at both ends of that spectrum I was talking about. So I worked as the head of the technical team on new media for the BBC Weather Centre. And at the same time, I worked on the web, not at the same time, later on, I worked a couple of years at ECMWF in the web team at the very scientific and technical end of producing visualizations for weather. And then recently, I've started working part-time as a journalist for sailing media. And so I do find myself wanting to tell weather-related stories about sailing races, and it's been quite frustrating finding an easy way to do that. I'm also, sort of my personal interests include sailing, in particular offshore ocean racing. In fact, I left ECMWF in 2013 in order to take part in the original single-handed transatlantic race, which is a solo race 3,000 miles across the North Atlantic, which is not undertaken lightly. Recently, I moved to the Atlantic coast of France in order to be in a place where I could better combine my personal and professional interests. So the example that I'm working on for my project is, as a demonstration of how a tool like this could be useful, is to tell some stories about the Vendée Globe Race. And for those of you who might not be aware of it, the Vendée Globe Race is a 4-yearly non-stop solo around the world yacht race, which starts and ends in Les Sables d'Olonne. The last version edition started last November, and the last competitor finished in early March. But it generally takes between 80 and 120 days. And during that time, the skippers are sort of 24/7 in race mode. It's sort of like running, 4 marathons a day for 80 to 100 days. So it's quite a superhuman. I mean, I don't think there's any kind of sporting event that comes close to requiring that sort of physical effort. But on top of that, these skippers, are managing these 60-foot boats. They're having to look at, download weather information a couple times a day and plan the route. And then also, as of the last edition, they were required by the organizers to be creating videos. So sending back at least every couple of days a short video, talking about what's been happening on their boat during the race. So this event is followed online by 11 million fans, and across France, you just can't get away from it. They claim that there were 193,000 pieces of coverage about the last edition of the race alone. So it's a big deal, and it's a lot of fun to follow. And if you're sort of interested in the weather side of it, the official website has a tracker, and it shows, as you can see here, that some weather information, which is basically just, I suspect, GFS 10-meter wind, which is great and really useful for understanding. But as anyone who's done any sort of ocean sailing will know, there's a lot more that affects how you race the boat than just the wind, or at least just the sustained wind. So there are things like gusts and sea state, waves. When you're in the tropics, the Cape parameter is quite useful to help you figure out where the thunderstorms and sort of convective systems are likely to come and bite you. And then when you get close to the south, towards Antarctica, you're starting to worry about sea ice, which is something that the organizers are quite concerned about, to the extent that they have set up an exclusion zone where the boats are very strongly penalized if they stray into the ice zone. So what I'm doing so far is building a proof of concept demo, which is essentially a bunch of scripts that deal with downloading the ERA 5 reanalysis grids from the Climate Data Service, and use those to create overlays for the parameters of interest. And what I'm outputting here is KML files for Google Earth. So you can go into Google Earth and you can sort of turn on and off the various sort of layers of interest that you want to look at. And at the same time, I have a script that creates a track for each boat. And each of those can be turned on and off as the user is, if they're just interested in one boat or a couple or all of them. It's up to you which ones you want to see. And then one of my scripts creates mouse overs for each path. So for the fields of interest, it will go and create sort of the KML markup to allow you to mouse over and see sort of what the wind was doing at every point on the track and what the waves were like, etc. And then finally, to sort of make it even more interesting, the skippers' onboard videos will be given as links along the track, so you can sort of watch, the videos of the skippers and what they're experiencing, but at the same time have the context provided by the overall experience of sort of showing what the weather is doing on the globe. So that's what I've done so far. So for the future, once I have a kind of slightly more polished demo, I will share it and try to see who's interested. So I'll be sharing it with people like other sailing journalists, or the media teams of the race teams, or the media team of the actual event. And then there are a number of teams that had collaborations with scientific teams where they were taking measurements and observations of things like sea salinity and temperature as they went round. So it might be the case that they'd like to use a tool like this to disseminate their results to the general public. So not in terms of scientific or academic type communication, but communicating with the sort of general public. And so after sort of sharing it with them, I would hope to get some feedback and make changes in response. So, so for example, there might be parameters that I've not considered that would be of interest to some of these parties. So for example, at the moment I'm showing on this slide a chart of the Benjamin Fear Index, which is a fairly little known available parameter that is a kind of measure of the likelihood of rogue waves. And apparently it's used quite a bit by professional ship routers. But as far as I know, it's kind of not really known about within the ocean racing community, and it might be something that could interest them. So once I sort of make those changes and get the feedback, the next step is to actually turn it into more of a product, document it, and make it easy for other people to pick it up and use it. And as I said, I'm interested in seeing other possible uses in other domains, especially those on the land versus just on the sea. And I'd also be interested in exploring other outputs formats. So this particular event is a global event, so it makes sense to be looking at it on Google Earth on the whole globe, but there might be other events which have a much smaller range, geographic range, which would be better off done in something like Leaflet.js, to be embedded in a web page. So that's where I'm at, and I'm kind of really having a lot of fun doing this and looking forward to getting it out there and getting feedback and seeing where it goes. And that's me. Thank you very much.